My name is Marty with Clear Security's TCX Training Department, and we're here today to talk about interactive maps. Now, I say it like that because we have two different mapping functions. The first one you can find over here if you look under the Applications menu in the sidebar in Admin Center. If you click on the thing, you can see there's a couple of things we can launch, and one of those is Map Builder. That allows us to build our own maps with pictures. We can place things on them, and that is training on another video. This one is going to talk today about interactive maps, and that is the integration that Latitude has with Google Maps and Google Earth. So to start, let's go ahead and go to the logical view in the top left sidebar, and you can see I've got a series of things listed here, and they're logical entities, right? And to add any new logical entity, I simply right-click the system menu at the top, and I have various logical entities that I can add. Similarly, if I'm in my physical view that shows all of the physical server components in Latitude, if I right-click that system menu, of course, I have the option to add physical components. So we're going to add a logical component today, an interactive map. Now you can see already I have a few, and this is what the map icon looks like here in the navigation area. So for instance, let's go ahead and take a look at our Chicago map. Now you can see when it takes you to the map itself, it displays it on the right-hand side. We have two different tabs. One is the GIS Map Tab, and that is where we add in the GIS information that's associated with the city of Chicago, because that's what we want the map to look like. And this is what I got right from Google Earth itself, or Google Maps itself, and we'll see that here in just a second when we create a new map for the San Francisco airport as the example that I have sort of staged. Now, notice the longitude and latitude are listed, but also the eye altitude. This comes into play a lot depending on what you want to see. So when we first go to this map, and we'll look at it on the General tab and see a picture of it, but the eye altitude decides how close in or how far out you are sort of looking at the latitude and longitude here that represent the city of Chicago. So eye altitude is important. We'll see how that's important when we create our new map and how it can change the view. This one is also important right here, the show video when hovering. Now in Admin Center, when we're creating the interactive map, it's not going to show anything when we hover except for a little informational bubble and tells you the name of the camera that you have placed on that map. However, in Control Center, where the operators are using maps, if they hover their mouse over the particular camera that's listed on the map, and it would be this one, right? That's why it's over here on the right and not in the available entries. We've actually added this camera, and I believe this is a Wrigley Field camera, right? That's what I've assigned to it, because not only do we have to give the GIS information, the lon and lat, for the map itself. In order to place the camera on the map, we also have to go to the Cameras tab, which we'll do here in just a second and see, and give the camera itself the same longitude and latitude information so it can be plotted on the map itself. So now that we've got all this stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the Chicago map. And you can see there it is, Chicago. You see I have a camera up here, and as I mentioned, I believe I put that in Wrigley Field. Now, how did I do it? Well, first of all, let's go ahead and notice how far away we are, right? It's a sort of 30,000 foot view here over the city of Chicago, and for those of you familiar, Wrigley Field is in the northern suburbs. Now, if we wanted to change, if we wanted to zoom in a little bit more than what it's looking at right here, that is the eye altitude that we talked about. So if I drop this to 8, for instance, it's actually going to pull further back out, which you'll see after I save it. And you can see it's much further out now. And the opposite is true as well, right? If I go back again and I set this to, originally it was 10. If I set this to 12, then it'll do the opposite. It'll actually zoom in further than what we saw originally. But you can see we're much closer now, as predicted, and we're so close that the camera that I have attached to this is actually not even there, right, because we're zoomed in much further than we were. Now, again, as you can see right here, Wrigley Field, I went and got the information, the longitude and latitude, so I could place this camera on the map. And it's really basically that simple. It's all based on GIS information, right? Longitude, latitude, and then that eye altitude, which is going to dictate what your camera looks like. So, I've got another one here as well. I wanted to point out here that that eye altitude really comes into play because I have this camera in Chicago at Wrigley Field. If I go to my default map, you can see that I actually have two cameras on this map, right? Oh, and the reason for that is this started out as a New York City map, where that's the default longitude and latitude that you start with once you have your interactive map set up and licensed in Latitude. And so I placed the camera. This camera is actually in Times Square, and this one is in Chicago. And the reason I can see them both on this map, if I go to it, is because of that eye altitude that we talked about, right? It's showing 4. So if I wanted to zoom back in a little bit closer to what this actually was intended to be, I believe 9 is the default that the map is set at. And again, I'm actually checking this box so I can make sure these cameras light up. And this is why we saw 2 cameras on that map, right? One's in Chicago, one's in Times Square. Now that we zoom back in a little bit closer, you can see that we're now zoomed in back into New York. And if I actually zoomed in a little bit closer, you would actually see that this camera is sitting in Midtown and even further in Times Square. So you can see how it is. Now, how did I determine where to place this camera or to assist the mapping function in placing this camera right here in Times Square? I actually, well, let's see. This camera is the 0.52. So if we go to that camera itself, let's go take a look. Now here's the camera. It's obviously not in Times Square, but I'm sort of fooling the system, right? Because I come down here on the camera's general tab, down into the GIS positioning, which you can see down here, and I've given it the longitude and latitude for Times Square. Now altitude comes into play if you have 3D modeling in your maps, which you can create, but the altitude here would go align with above sea level, right? So if this was a Denver camera, for instance, if the longitude and latitude represented that, I could put in 5,280, right? We're talking above sea level. Chicago, in my map, I think I left altitude off because from the top-down view, the altitude doesn't really matter. It's only when you start looking at it sideways and some of the functions within Google Earth in particular allow you to change your sort of aspect of what you're looking at. So altitude is always good to have, although not mandatory, and you'll see it doesn't seem to affect our view of this. So this camera is placed in Times Square simply because I've added this information into it. Same thing with my other cameras here. This is my 51 camera. I believe this is the one that I have assigned to, could be New York, could be, I don't even know where it is, to be honest. I'd have to look it up. But that's what the camera, and that's exactly how it gets plotted on the map, is because we simply come to the camera and give it some information. Now, so what I want to do then is create a new map, and I have a camera that I have not had. I have 4 cameras actually installed here, and only 3 are actually attached to any of the other maps. So we're going to do the things that we need to do. We're going to create a map first. We're going to give it its longitude and latitude, so it'll actually display and a visual of what we want to see. And then we're going to go somewhere around in that map. We're going to find a very specific street corner, and we're going to find the longitude and latitude for that camera, and we're going to place it right on the map, and you can see how easy it is. All right, so the first thing we need to do, we're in our logical view, we right-click System, and we add a GIS map. Now, we talked about the other maps, right? This is for Map Builder. It's not interactive. It's just basically creating a picture and then placing items on there that you can link to, and that's a cool mapping function. But today we're here to talk about the GIS map. So I'm going to add a GIS map. And you can see now I've got a new map, right? It's the Earth. That's actually, it's the sort of flat globe look, right? Here's the whole Earth. Here's the whole Earth again. Here's the whole Earth. If I were to plot a camera and add it to this map, which we can do on our other tab, which you're going to see, it would show up wherever it is that I showed that longitude and latitude information. So for this one, I've already sort of staged this just a little bit. So let's call this San Francisco Airport. All right, so say we're the city of San Francisco, we could actually do a city of San Francisco map, adjust that altitude, that eye level, so we're looking at the whole thing. Or we can, in addition to that, we could do individual maps around the city of various locations. So I think this is a good example. This would be the airport itself. Now, how do I tell it where the airport is? Well, I got to find that information up here. Well, actually, I got to put in that information right up here in that GIS mapping function. Now, I've already done it. So let's go ahead and go to my staged area. And you can see all these other ones, Wrigley Field. I came out every time I found one longitude and latitude, I would place it right here. Now, how did I find this longitude and latitude? Well, let's go take a look. I went to Google Maps, and I simply right-clicked where I was looking for. So if I right-click that, you can see this is the important thing. This gives you the longitude and latitude that we're going to need. You simply right-click wherever you're talking about, and you click on what's here. Down at the bottom, you can see 37. I may have clicked just slightly over a little bit, so my numbers may be just 1 or 2 off of this, but my longitude is going to be 37.6213. Let's go ahead and take a look at what ours is. Oops, not in there yet. Sorry, I had it on my sheet here. 31.6212. So you can see where I clicked before when I first staged this was very close to that. So what I want to do is I need to put this information right up into here. So 37.6212, 7.6212, and in the latitude, I need a -122, 3789. -122, 3789. All right, now again, eye level, very important. If I do it like this, we're going to see a big, huge world map, and it'll just have a little indicator that it's called that. So you won't be able to tell that it's the airport because we'll be from looking at it from the moon, basically, right? So we need to change that number. So I'm going to put it up to 9. Which is usually my comfort zone. Anywhere in there is fine. If you're zooming into a neighborhood, maybe you might want to use the same stuff, but use a higher number, 12, for instance. You can go up to 16, and that literally puts you right on street corners and stuff. Now, again, I want to click this box as I'm creating my interactive map, because when I add a camera from over here, which you could see, I don't want to add these cameras yet. I want to find a camera that's plotted in the San Francisco airport area to place on that map. We're going to do that in a second. First, we have to create the map. So I've got the map created. It looks good. I got my longitude, latitude in there. I have the appropriate eye altitude, and I'm configured so it will show cameras pop up in Control Center when the operator needs to see it. All right, so our map is now saved. Now let's go back and take a look at what we see. So you can see I'm right over San Francisco, and anybody that knows the area, the San Francisco airport is actually somewhere right down in here. So we're right smack in the middle of our map, but maybe I want to look a little bit closer than that, right? Maybe that's a little too far out for me. Again, that's a whole sort of Southern or Northern California thing. So I want to zoom in a little bit closer. Let's pop this up to 11 and see what that does. Save it. And you can see I'm a little bit closer, right? I'm still there, but I need to come in a little bit closer than that. So let's go ahead and go back to this, and we're going to drop that down to about 14. See what that appears. Save. And there we go. So we're at the San Francisco airport now, and this is a good spot. So you can see how using that that eye level really comes into play depending on what you want to show and what you want to name your map. Now that I'm back at the airport here, now again, we're going to have this camera. We haven't plotted any GIS information yet, but we need to determine that GIS information. So now the one thing about this is, even though we have an integrated maps, you have to get this information from the actual Google Maps browser. So let's go ahead and bring that back up. Here's a good reflection. It looks pretty much the same. So let's actually try to find a camera. Let's say that there's, here's a good example. Here's the InOut Burger, which is just outside of the airport. Say we wanted our camera to be plotted right at that spot, right there. So let's first, the best thing you want to do when you're choosing the location for your cameras and before you get your GIS information, you want to zoom in really, maybe not on top of it, but kind of as close as possible, because this is going to show up on our latitude maps just as close as we did it. For instance, if I plotted something right here versus plotting it over here, it would actually show the difference, right? If I zoomed in on my latitude map, it would actually show it on this side if I used the right longitude and latitude. So anyway, I'm going to just click right on the InOut Burger itself, and as we talked about, I just right-click the map and I choose what's here. And here we go. So my longitude is going to be 37.6007. Let's add that to our camera now. So this is what I was talking about. So the camera is going to be placed all by itself by simply coming to our camera that we want to place there, enabling its GIS positioning at the bottom of its General tab, and placing the information in here that we want, which I have promptly forgotten as I was talking. 37.6007. All right, that's one. And our second one is for the longitude, -122, 3824. All right, we're plotted it now, and again, we could look up the sea level of this area, but we don't necessarily need it right now in a sort of 2D rendering of the map. But we've got it saved, and that's literally as easy as it is. This now is going to inform the latitude system and the latitude interactive maps that this camera should be placed at the InOut Burger. So let's go see if we can make it work. We hit save. Now the camera, again, it's my back porch looking at the tiki torch, but we've told the system that this is the InOut Burger outside of the airport. So now let's go back to our map that we've created. Here it is, San Francisco Airport. Here is our additional camera, the 61 camera that we've just now added that information to. We simply move it over, which places it on the map. And if our numbers that we just put into the cameras, longitude and latitude, were right on, we should be able to see that by going back and looking. All right, now you can see, if I was zoomed out just a little bit, I believe we would see that, because if you remember, it looks like that InOut Burger is right down here. Uh-oh, there she is. So when you're zooming in, and you can use the functions over here, the plus and the minus, try to put what you're looking for right smack in the middle of the map. And then as you zoom in, it does it once at a time. This may not tell us that InOut Burger is there, but if you recall on our map, as these off-ramps were coming off, it was exactly right there. And if you zoom in a little bit closer, maybe it'll tell us. Now this has the map functions. It doesn't show some of the buildings and whatever like actual maps do, but you can see that camera is right on that building right there, and as we know, that represents in our map itself where we got the information from, right on that InOut Burger. So it's really interesting and easy to set up. I think, again, you want to drill in as close as you can on your map to get that GIS information to put in your cameras tab right down here at the bottom. But once you do that, again, first thing, you create the map. You find how close in you want to look based on what that map is. You saw initially when I went to my San Francisco airport map, and I used an eye altitude that was much lower than this. It was giving me too much of the Bay Area. I just wanted to focus it in on what I called it, and that was the San Francisco airport. So I think we understand now how to create and plot cameras on maps, but now we need to go and see how the operator is going to be able to use that information. So we can see over here on the left-hand side, again, the logical view in Latitude is exactly what you're going to be seeing right here. So if you have sites and things like that set up there, they'll be showing up here. I just set this all up as a fresh install so we can show mapping. Now, you can see right down here, I have a couple of layouts already created. And one that I like to show, this is a sort of good example of how it's used in a command center. I'm going to double click this and it's going to show the layout. And I've already got the map plotted in there. So let's take a look. So you can see there's my map of Chicago, and again, I have it zoomed in. So what the operator sees right here is based on that eye level that we talked about when you're setting it up an admin center. And if you remember, of course, Wrigley Field is in the northern suburbs. So if we scroll down, you can see there she is. There's the camera. Now, if I hover my mouse over it, I can actually see the image itself. If you just click the camera one time, the information button goes away, and then you're able to see the live camera. And if you want to see it in one of your panes at the top, you just double click the camera, and it shows up in the actual pane you want. So say you get and another thing also, if there is an alert going off and a camera is attached to that alert, you'll see this camera light up red, and then so visually you'll be able to see. So in a command center, you might have this on one monitor, you might have the San Francisco airport on another monitor. We haven't even set that up yet. So what we can go ahead and do that now. Here's our actual San Francisco map, but what we want to do is create a layout just for San Francisco airport, which is what we just created. So I'm going to come down here where you can see add layout, and I'll call this SFO, right? That's the shorthand code for the San Francisco airport. And here's our new layout. I'm going to use the same structure that I used on the other one, just like this. So now we've got our San Francisco map. Let's go ahead and add it. And there she is. I might have to move it up just a little bit, or back in admin center, go ahead and adjust the eye level, right, that we talked about to get this looking exactly what I want. You can use the mapping functions here in Control Center and zoom in like so, but even if you can save a layout like this, it won't save this zoomed area. This is all dictated by that eye level in Admin Center. So if I were to save that layout, for instance, and there we go, call it layout saved, maybe you could save some armed, so you can see that actually will save that. So I'll save that tile is armed, this map zoomed in. If I make this go away and then bring it back, and you can see it zoom back out, and this is based again on the eye level in Admin Center. All right, with that said, I think that goes through so much. The only thing that we haven't shown yet is the sort of fly to function that we've got here. Say I wanted to fly to a specific thing. Let's try Golden Gate. There we go. Now you'll notice as I start typing, you can see Golden Gate Bridge. So if I wanted to fly and just look at a certain thing on my map, because of that interactive function that we have, the integration basically with Google Maps and Google Earth, obviously you need to have access to the internet. If this machine was not, you would not be able to get this function to work. But you can see I'm right on the Golden Gate Bridge because that's what I asked for. Again, anything that I type in here can be flown to basically. Let's say Times Square, Manhattan. There's Times Square, Manhattan. So you can see the functionality is pretty good. Now, I flew here on purpose, right? Because we know that we have another map that we actually have Times Square camera plotted on that map. But because this is the San Francisco Airport map, or SFO, it will not show that map, even though we have one plotted here. So sometimes there's a question about that. I wanted to point it out. But with that said, it's really that simple to utilize. It's a very powerful function. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. My email is marty.major@flir.com.